Today's top story from the perspective of someone who's there.
You are looking live.
This just in.
Not my beat.
Yeah, an extra hour of radio is the kind of thing you might do when the best player in your franchise history requests a trade. Brandon Sprague, host of Dirt and Sprague on 1080 The Fan in Portland, is with us. How was the extra hour this morning, man?
Oh, man, it was great, but we're bearing the lead. We got a one-year anniversary in radio. Look at us, man. Radio, huh?
I know.
1 year in, Craig. Let's do it.
They didn't fire me yet, which is
We all
nice.
know the end is coming for all of us, man. But, yeah, the extra hour today, for obvious reasons, Dame Lillard wants out. It's over.
Yeah, so when you first heard the news, like first initial reaction, this in a way, you know, it's one of those things. We've dealt with the Snyder selling story in slow motion for 8 months. In some ways, you've been dealing with this for longer. In some ways, it's been shorter. But kind of the reality, like, wow, this could happen, has been kind of unfolding over the last week. But when the news finally comes out, they've had the meeting, the trade has been requested. What's your thought?
Bummer. Pretty devastating for the city, man. Not many athletes. I know Portland's not highly thought of big market and hot sports story allure all across the country, man. But we got the Blazers, and the Blazers have been here since the 70s. So the love and dedication that the fan base has shown the franchise their entire existence is second to none. Dame Lillard is the equivalent of insert any great athlete all time for any great franchise in pro sports. I personally, I was mentally prepared for it. They used the number 3 pick in the draft. You could certainly make a great, organizational, futuristic argument of why they should do that and not trade it for an asset that may or may not get them closer to a championship. But that's not what the franchise was telling us here. And I think that's where the devastation, the sadness kind of comes in, is nobody wanted to lose Damian Lillard. He said time and time again he wanted to retire here. He wanted to be a Blazers whole career. He's just finishing up a mega mansion in a metro town right next to Portland, up the road. He's invested in the local school systems, and what he does in the community is big. But this franchise was talking about getting older and getting bigger. They got younger, and they got smaller. So on draft night, I prepared mentally for him to ask out. The rumblings started to build here locally, and Saturday when it happened, I don't think it caught everybody off guard, but the ones that did, pretty upset and surprised by it because we never thought we'd actually see him get to this point.
So I think that's really well put. I mean, the devastation for a guy who's truly great. Like this guy has been a top 15 NBA player for most of his career, truly an all-NBA caliber guy. And as you mentioned, all the off-court stuff and his loyalty is second to none in pro sports. But I also wonder, Brandon, like, were there moves to be made here, or did the Blazers kind of run into, I don't know what you call it, bad luck, bad timing, whatever, where they looked around for moves to make and realized there just wasn't something out there to do that would have actually gotten the Blazers with Lillard to a championship level?
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting look, I think, in his timeline here. He's drafted to what doesn't appear to be a great team, but it's kind of got a good young nucleus, right? LaMarcus, Nick Batum, Wes Matthews, pre-Achilles injury. There were pieces that made sense. He fit right in. He played well as a rookie, won unanimous Rookie of the Year, and they built from there. You lose LaMarcus in 2015. He just bolts. You get nothing for it. They start the Dame CJ era, and I would say it's not really that they didn't make a move now. It's the build-up to no move. So in 2016, they had all this cap space. They capitalized on it by giving Evan Turner a $70 million contract. At that time, that is ridiculous. Evan Turner can't shoot. He's not a threat offensively, and he's not elite defensively. It was a desperation move. That was their big free agent haul. In 2017, they have 2 picks to trade to get into the top 10 of the NBA draft. You know what they did with those picks? They traded them, moved up, took Zach Collins. You know who got picked after Zach Collins? A guy Dame wants to play for now, Bam Adebayo. They didn't even scout that draft properly, and they completely blew that away. That's my pivot point. 2018, they're the 3 seed in the West, swept out of the first round by the 6-seeded New Orleans Pelicans. And you know what they decided to do? Well, as every great small market team decides to do, let's run it back because, my golly, we were the 3 seed in the West. They lose in round 1 against the Denver Nuggets, who were shorthanded, had Jokic and a bunch of guys. They lose in 6 games in 2021. They run that thing right back. They only fired the coach. Team needed to be blown up since. I thought they could have made some moves last year. They ultimately, as an organization, decided the youth movement was the route to go. People here aren't even upset by that. They're excited to see Scoot Henderson and Shaden Sharp and see what that can blossom into. What we're upset today is the lack of moves through the years building to this point and the misleading or lying narrative they created themselves the last 18 months that we want to build around Dame, we want to win, we're going to do whatever we can. At the trade deadline, the GM was quoted, "I'm putting my chips in the middle, and some of you might even think we lost a trade, but we're taking a big swing." They traded Gary Payton II for second-round draft picks, made no real moves after that, and then used all their draft picks on 19, 21, and 19-year-old players. Those are not moves you make when you want to win with Dame. They wanted to do one thing, but publicly said they were doing another. It was just a bunch of misleading information that ultimately got us to the point where Dame has no choice. He gave you all his time. He gave you multiple commitments through extensions. He's done everything he can on his end. They just didn't see the winner, but they lied about it, and that's the part that people are upset about.
Brandon Sprague with us, 1080 The Fan in Portland, giving us the lay of the land up there. That is so fascinating to me to hear that timeline because there's actual stuff there. Like, in so many ways, and we're going to talk about this later here, like the comparisons between Lillard and Beal, and I think they are ridiculous in many ways. I'm curious what you think from your end of it, because on my end, trade me Dame for Bradley any day of the week and twice on Sunday. Like, Bradley was All-NBA once. Dame has been in that conversation most years of his career. But I think also here, there's like all these little moves where they're never even close. To hear how close they were and that it's not really necessarily about just this third pick now, I think is pretty fascinating, Brendan. And I'm curious, well, if you say people are not upset with the youth movement, how much trust and faith is there in that Blazers brain trust, especially when they moved on from a guy previously like Terry Stotts in a coaching position who was so successful for so long and someone that Dame, frankly, liked a lot from what I know and understand.
Well, and not only just move on from Terry Stotts, who had a great relationship, but also, had some success and showed to be one of the better offensive minds. He's credited to the Dallas title when they beat LeBron and the Heat for what he did offensively for that team. They ran him out, and you know what they decided to do? Then general manager Neil Olshey, who once upon a time was a soap opera actor, then turned NBA agent, then turned developmental front office guy, hired his former client, Chauncey Billups, who had all about 1 year of assistant coaching experience in his entire career, and we gave him a 5-year guaranteed deal. So we kind of locked ourselves into a bad situation, and what I would say is, you're right. I tend to agree with you on the Beal-Lillard stuff. Like, Beal's a good player. I liked Beal. Beal Wall, once upon a time, was fun as a league pass guy for me to watch on the West Coast. They're not in the same ballpark. We are talking about all-NBA guy consistently when he plays. Bradley Beal, has Bradley Beal made an All-Star in the last 2 or 3 seasons? I don't know last time he made an All-Star game.
Yeah.
Okay, and Bradley Beal seems like a good dude, but these are not the same stature of player. And Portland, once upon a time, was considered a pretty respectable franchise. If you go look at the all-time win-loss record percentages, Portland's not far off. Like, they don't have the championships that other cities do, but they were pretty consistently at least finding themselves in the playoffs and getting further than most franchises. Where this thing all went wrong, like when we look back and we say, man, how did this happen? Aside from all those moves, we also would point to the death of Paul Allen. The Blazers owner tragically passed away, and his estate has been left to his company, the Vulcans, which is head by his sister. And if you want some fun fodder, Google Jody Allen and her backstory. You've got all kinds of craziness. You've got animal bone stealing. You've got sexual harassment charges by former military bodyguards who, in one time during a trial, said they'd rather be shot at than defend her as a bodyguard again. That's a true story. She won't talk to the local media. Yeah, she does. She doesn't talk to local media. She doesn't care about sports, but she's milking the cow. And unfortunately, milking the cow means taking advantage of diehard Blazer fans while not really knowing or caring a whole lot about franchise building. And so today, it's not just devastation from being misled for 18 months. it's really a look in the mirror of there's bad ownership here. This is truly awful NBA ownership, and Phil Knight's over here in Beaverton begging to buy the team to revitalize it and see a championship, and she won't sell it because she's waiting for expansion, and that estate hasn't made clear how long she's allowed to keep it before they finally have to get off of it. So there's a whole wild backstory, not just from the general manager and roster building, but the ownership group here right now is a disaster, and people are really tired of it.
Wow. I knew that the Allen Estate stuff was wacky. I did not know all of that. Obviously familiar with it as well from the NFL side because they also own the Seahawks. And everyone assumes they'll be next after this sale here is finalized. And boy, do we know something about bad ownership here in Washington. Wow, that's a lot. Brandon Sprague is with us, 1080 The Fan up in Portland. So I guess the question now is what's next, Brandon? Like, what is a good return for Damian Lillard, and what do you think the franchise can or should, and what do you think they will do in regards to his request to go to Miami?
Well, I don't think they're going to give in directly to Miami. Miami's deal is pretty crappy. Like, we don't need Tyler Hero. It actually doesn't make sense for the current iteration of the Blazers. I think he's a good player. This whole complete bashing of Tyler Hero as if he's an absolute scrub. Like, the dude can go get 20 points in a game. That's not something you just shy away from. But this franchise, the way they're built, he actually doesn't fit a position of need, so it's not really a valuable piece. Plus, they're not trying to be too heavy on how much money they're spending. They gave Jeremy Grant a little bit more than his market value. You already have Anthony Simons on a $100 million deal. I would imagine, given how truly awful the Miami package is, and I don't mean to take a shot at you, but not all organizations are taking the Brad Beal deal just to get out of the Brad Beal deal. So, and I know they were hamstrung a little bit.
Dame doesn't have a no-trade clause, and so they should not. The Beal thing, man, that's the worst contract in history of the league, in my opinion.
100%, and I'm happy that you guys got moved off it, and Winger seems like, by all reports, a good dude. I think, because Dame's getting this conversation now, I almost would have challenged Bradley Beal to say, okay, well, I don't like the Phoenix trade, and you're a good basketball player. Like, what are you going to do, not play basketball? But that's not the way the league is run. So my best guess, to answer your question, is Miami, I think, is where I would put my chips in that he ultimately lands, because I think they're going to do right by him. But I think they've put the onus on Miami. Go find us a third team. You give us your crap, and we'll take a little bit of their stuff, and you give them Hero. You reroute Tyler Hero from Miami to fill in the blank, and that team gives Portland a draft pick, maybe a young player. We get a couple guys from Miami, and we get all of Miami's draft capital. I think if you can get, anytime you sell a player like this, you're trading them on the market like that, I think you're lucky if you can get 80 cents on the dollar. You're not getting $1 for $1 of Dame Lillard. Maybe in 5 years we'll view it that way, but in the immediate sense, you're the one losing that trade. So I think if Portland can get to 80 cents on the dollar, they'd be ecstatic. I'd imagine, though, he ends in Miami, and they somehow get the Nets or the Sixers or Clippers. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's a 3 or 4 team deal, but it's not going to be a direct deal. That Miami deal, man, that's a Brad Beal deal because he'd have a trade clause, but he doesn't. So I think you got to open this thing up. But ultimately, I think the star usually goes where they ask to go, and it sounds like he wants to go to Miami. Yeah,
definitely. So, I mean, the Beal thing is like, they needed to start over. So just getting out of the contract is worth the first-round pick. But that's a different conversation, and one that we've obviously been having over the past couple of weeks, I do wonder, though, if there is no deal to be had. Cronin's statement was interesting because, it was basically like, we hear him, we'll try, but no promises. Do you think there's any way that Lillard winds up staying in Portland?
No, I think he's done. He's made it abundantly clear on his social medias that he is done. He's reposting people saying thank you and we love you and stuff. And I know he's going to act like he didn't know this, but somebody reposted a fan from Instagram, and the statement basically says, "I fell in love with basketball because of you. This crap show of an organization could never get a star for you." And it's just this long, lengthy message. He reposted that. He's not doing that if he's going to contemplate and back out. And I don't think he requests out. unless he is all in. And I can tell you right now, I'm not best friends with Dame, but you can hear whispers. It's pretty loud. He's done. They kind of misled him along this process. I know what Cronin's statement says. Joe Cronin also sent out 18 months of statements, and to tell your audience the truth, he didn't back up any of them. So, like, it's one thing to talk a big game and act like you're going to be firm in your stance. It's another to say, okay, do I want to be done with this? Not that you just settle for a crap deal because Dame wants out, but how long are you really going to bargain this stuff for? So, again, I think we get multiple teams involved. This could get done a little quicker, but I know Joe Cronin is going to want young, valuable assets. I just read his message as, Miami, you want him? Make the deal sweeter. That's kind of how I read that. And then there's tea leaves today about the Nets and Tyler Hero, and I think there's some form of a trade that could be looming, and I think it's kind of there, but everybody's just putting on their tough bargaining faces. Joe Cronin's been talking about doing this and doing that and doing this and doing that. For 18 months, he's done none of it. So I don't know how much faith people can really have that he's going to go get this, Kevin Durant-like package. If he can, great, but I don't know if I see that yet.
Brandon Sprague with us, 1080 The Fan in Portland, host of their morning show. I know you're a huge NBA guy, and like if you're like me, another huge NBA guy, then you spend way too much time on the trade machine. Is there a deal that you've put together when you're just fiddling around that you actually like for Portland?
I haven't. I've been trying to actually put that thing away. It tends to get me in trouble with people because I might not be as realistic. Like some people think I don't get enough when I do trade. I think it's kind of what we're hinting at there, though. Like, we know Miami. Hero removed the heat from his bio. We know Miami's shopping Tyler Hero. I don't think he's an absolute bum. I think there's some form where he ends up on the Nets, and the rest is tough to gauge because I don't know what the Nets are giving up. I would imagine most of the draft capital for Hero and from Miami gets rerouted to Portland. Now, you need to fill in the young player. If he goes to the Spurs, it's Jeremy Sohan, and I think that's a smart move by Joe Cronin and the Blazers if they indeed do trade Dame to the Spurs. If it's Utah, you can see like where they'd go with that one, right? Hendricks and Agbaji and all the Minnesota picks. That sounds great. I don't know how Dame feels about Utah. If we're just keeping this to Miami and the way this works, I think you get a team like the Nets involved, and you send Hero there. They send draft capital towards the Blazers. Miami sends the Nets one pick in the future first round or a pick swap, and we get Jaime Jaquez and fill-in-the-blank roster fill that it would take here in Portland. I think that's how that kind of would break out.
Got it. Yeah, there's not a lot to like on either of those two rosters. I got them up in front of me. There's not. You scroll down to the salaries, and it's like young players that are worth getting. Not really.
Right. Right.
So that's not ideal. I got one more tapping into your NBA thing. I almost pulled this pop trivia on you earlier. I'm going to do it now. You just blindsided me with the Jody Allen stuff that I was not prepared for. You mentioned the Blazers franchise. Their winning percentage all time is right up there. They've obviously had so much success with Lillard, but they don't have the titles other franchises do. I believe the Blazers and Wizards, and then Bullets, won back-to-back in 78 and 79, if I'm remembering correctly, which is the last title for both of them. However, Brandon, as a big NBA guy, do you know the last time the Washington Wizards or Bullets won 50 games in an NBA season?
Oh. Man, it's not... Are you going to make me go back to Gilbert Arenas, or are we going back further than that?
We're going back further than that.
Really? Dude, I don't know. When was the last time they won 50 games?
It was that championship 1979 season.
You guys haven't won 50 games since you won the title in the 70s?
That's correct.
Look, I'm Portland, Oregon, right? Who am I to be laughing at you guys? That's awful. And I actually...
Correct.
I say it all the time, like, when we talk about big markets, like, DC will get brought up sometimes, and I kind of go through things, and, like, I'm so happy that Ovi got that cup. I'm glad that they finally broke through because they had all those years of being good and then getting eliminated early. And it's a damn disgrace what Snyder's done to that football franchise, man. Like, you guys are in, like, you're in a weird zone right now. I don't know what the new owner's going to do or what he can do legally, but you got to get out of this Commanders deal. I'm going to tell you right now, the West Coast is laughing. We thought that was like an any given Sunday football team name joke thing, and then it actually came to fruition. It was just like we did a poll, and everybody was saying, I would rather just be the Washington football team than the Commanders. I mean, it's just
didn't I come on your show and we talked about it? And I was like, yes, that is correct. We would rather, people here would also rather be the Washington football team.
Like, you could have done the Red Tails, the Red Hogs, or just stayed the Washington football team, and you would have won that. And they were like, hey, how do we lose this branding? I got an idea. Let's make a name that the USFL wouldn't accept. What is that? Oh, it's the Commanders. You're the Washington Commies. Like, why would you want to be called that? I don't get it.
Because Dan Snyder's not very smart, Brandon. I don't know if you've noticed that over the course of 25 years of ownership.
Hey, it might not be all roses for all your franchises, but at least you got a cup recently, and at least you got a World Series a couple of years ago, man.
Mm-hmm.
Like, life could be worse.
And we got out of the Beal contract, so that's nice.
Yes.
All right. Well, I feel great now. Thanks, buddy. Thanks, pal.
Hey, let's do this. Let's make like a sandwich or a beer bet, and we just Venmo each other. Let's make a sandwich or a beer bet on which organization will make the playoffs first from this point. Like, once Dame's traded, let's go from that point, and whoever makes the playoffs first. Or do you want to just wait our whole lives out for championships that we're never going to see?
And see, my producer Anthony, you just turned what? 27 was your birthday recently?
Yes, sir.
So I think Anthony's got a better chance than us. But yeah, would you say playoffs?
Yeah, no play-in. It has to be a playoff.
So if they make the play-in, but then they actually get in, that counts.
That counts. There'll be a playoff team, yes.
All right, I'm down. Oh, yeah, no, 100%. And it might not be, let's just, to bring this thing full circle, hopefully both of us still have radio shows by then, you know?
I mean, odds are we won't, but you know what? I mean, that's what email's for, right?
Right, sure. Venmo's digital. We don't need a radio show for that. All right, so we got...
Exactly.
We just go full meal, beer and a sandwich on Wizards and Blazers who makes the playoffs first after Lillard gets traded.
Yes, I think that's a great deal.
Virtual handshake. We've done it. Good stuff, man. I appreciate the time. I know it's been crazy. Great work, with all the extra stuff you're doing up there as well, and hopefully we'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, man, anytime. Hit me up, and I'd love to hop on. Thanks for having me.
You got it. All right, that's Brandon Sprague, everybody, with us from Dirt and Sprague mornings on our Odyssey sister station, 1080 The Fan. If you want live local coverage of the Damian Lillard trade situation, you can listen to 1080 The Fan on the free Odyssey app.
This is the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and the Odyssey app.